looking into this for us. So what are you learning, Brian?
Well, tonight we've got new information that Vladimir Putin's hackers may well be trying to breach the campaign of France's centrist presidential candidate, Emmanuel Macron. We've been in touch with a cybersecurity firm who says the hackers, with the same fingerprints as those who hacked into the Democratic Party last year, have targeted Macron's campaign. Analysts say with less than 2 weeks left until France's final vote, Putin is likely trying to tilt the election in favor of far-right French candidate Marine Le Pen. Tonight, new indications that Vladimir Putin may be trying to influence another election, possibly targeting France's centrist presidential candidate Emmanuel Macron with his hackers. The cybersecurity firm Trend Micro tells CNN 4 domains were created with names very similar to the Macron campaigns, presumably to try to trick campaign staff into entering their credentials. Trend Micro says the effort by a hacking group called Pawn Storm had the same fingerprints as the hackers nicknamed Fancy Bear, who targeted the Democratic National Committee and the Clinton campaign. Hackers who U.S. officials linked to Russian intelligence.
I'd say the French are very open to such things. Already you're seeing all sorts of scandals among the French political class, sex scandals, corruption scandals, and so I would think there'd be a rich vein of information that the Russians could try and get their hands on.
It's not clear if Russian hackers actually attempted or were successful in breaching the Macron campaign. But a French official tells CNN the French government is taking steps to counter such attempts, its intelligence services warning the campaigns to guard against them. Analysts say Putin is likely maneuvering against Macron to tilt the election toward the far-right candidate, Marine Le Pen.
Le Pen has been very open about her desire to have better relations with Russia. She's an outspoken opponent of sanctions. She's very interested in taking France outside of NATO. She has a very populist right-wing message that plays to Putin's narrative.
Putin denies trying to tilt the French elections, but he's also been very aggressive with his military in recent weeks. Russian planes recently buzzed an American destroyer in the Black Sea. A Russian spy ship has been spotted near the Connecticut coast. And 4 times in 4 days last week, Russian military aircraft flew right off the coast of Alaska and were intercepted by American and Canadian fighter jets.
He's probing, he's trying to see areas of vulnerabilities, test our systems. Each time they do one of these close air encounters, they learn a little bit about our defenses. Also trying to keep the United States and our NATO partners off balance. Even if unintended, we could get ourselves in a shooting war with the Russians.
Russian officials deny that their aircraft have made any unsafe moves, and a Russian official told me today that while many are talking about the Russian aerial maneuvers off Alaska, he says NATO planes always fly close to Russia's borders near Kaliningrad on the Black Sea and, Kaliningrad in the Baltic Sea and in the Black Sea region. A NATO official counters by saying it's not a problem if NATO and Russian planes fly so close to each other because the airspace in that region is so crowded. Wolf?
Ryan Todd reporting for us. Thanks very much. We're back with Adam Kinzinger, the Republican congressman. Congressman, many Americans were unaware of the extent of Russian influence on the 2016 presidential election until afterwards. So what lessons should we be looking for as we see this French election play out over the next 2 weeks?
Well, this comes as absolutely no surprise to me or anybody that watches. This is Russia's MO. They're trying to create consternation within a country. They're trying to put their candidates in place. They interfered in the U.S. election, and we have an investigation underway on that. We knew this was going to happen in France. We knew this is going to happen in other elections in Europe. This is Vladimir Putin, a generally pretty weak country. It's not the old Soviet Union, but it's his way of trying to change the board. And if you look at the French election, for instance, Macron, pretty good guy, was in France last week. But Le Pen, I mean, this is part of a party that has expressed a lot of anti-Semitic views, that has said she wants to consider pulling France out of NATO and all these other things. And by the way, the French have been among the most forward-leaning partners in NATO in the war on terror. So this is no surprise to anybody that watches this stuff. But hopefully the French citizens are aware that the Russians are doing their best to pick their presidential candidate and pick their president, and they can push back.
So with the knowledge, Congressman, that Russia is apparently trying to tip the scale toward Marine Le Pen, was it appropriate for President Trump the other day to start making predictions about how last week's ISIS attack on the Champs-Élysées in Paris could help her candidacy?
No, I don't think so. I'm always uncomfortable when a U.S. president gets involved in other people's elections. It really is not something that's been done much in the past, if at all. Just like I'd be uncomfortable if a foreign leader endorsed, had it been Hillary or Donald Trump in our election. I think you allow a domestic election to be chosen by the folks in that country. And by the way, that's a message to Russia, too. Let the French pick their president. Quit trying to do your fake news stuff. Quit trying to steal information and embarrass people. But the French citizens need to know, and probably many are watching, what is happening, what's going on, and be able to push back against Russian interference in your domestic politics.
Do you believe, Congressman, that the Trump administration will hold firm on sanctions against Russia until Russia returns control of Crimea to Ukraine, as Secretary Tillerson said?
I certainly hope so. I think this is very important. When you look at, for instance, Latvia, we never recognized the Russian occupation of Latvia throughout the whole Cold War. I think we're going to see that here. Despite some of what President Trump had said earlier, the administration and his current words have actually been very hawkish on Russia. So whatever's changed in that calculus, I think the Russians and Vladimir Putin need to know that the sanctions, at least as far as we're concerned, are going to be in place until he turns Crimea back to its rightful owner, which is Ukraine.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, thanks very much for joining us.
You bet, anytime.
Just ahead, pressure on